Srila Prabhupada ki. Gita Values, Part 4. Everyone here has been through parts 1 through, some parts of 1 through 3, yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Don't have to do all the preliminary? Let's go to the iceberg. The part of the iceberg of culture that we're focusing on is that middle part. There's the observable behaviors part. There's the values that's not so visible part that drives behaviors. And there's unchanging realities down at the bottom. As this applies immaterially, it also applies spiritually. We saw these slides too already. Let's keep going. Gita value number 4. Acharya teaching by example. So we're going to start with an audience involvement question. So get ready. Why role models have left a lasting impression on our lives. So I invite you to share some ideas. Just raise your hand. And why role models have left a lasting impression or impact on our lives. You weren't ready for this. Go ahead.
Because whatever the value they usually speak outside, they follow that inside as well. But whatever they speak, they usually follow that particular value. So that's why we follow them, as that's why they become our role models in society.
Okay, you have a nice approach to responding to the question. The lasting impact is because you see that what they speak and what their convictions are match.
Yeah.
And that's impactful.
Yes.
It's inviting to follow that example because they walk their talk.
Yeah.
They live their values. Good. Very good. There's different ways of thinking about this. Go ahead.
I was thinking that they brought us the science of Krishna, the Krishna consciousness to us in a way that we can easily understand. We can easily follow the Krishna consciousness.
Okay. Let's broaden this beyond, Krishna conscious role models, but just people in your life. Maybe a school teacher or somebody or something. So that's good. Why role models have left a lasting impact on our lives? Why?
Guru Maharaj, I feel like they have helped me become a better person.
Okay, the next question is how, but there's the why. Good.
Raj, I think for me, we know a lot in theory, and sometimes we don't know how to apply the theory. But when you see someone do it and you take inspiration from that person, it sort of shows you that, hey, it's practical and not just far out.
Mm-hmm. You look like you're getting inspired over here. Do you want to share something? Yes.
Sure. I think it's the passion and dedication for work and involvement in faith and what you believe in, bringing all people together, spreading the message of love, doing service. That is what I would look for in a role model, and I do have a number of people who have inspired me in my life.
So, is it be responsive specifically to the question. I heard what you said, but try to specifically address, because it's there on the screen. Why?
I'm sorry, I can't think of your...
Well, I can just take your words and turn it around and say, here's something that I see as a value when I see persons living that way that inspires me to do it, to live by that value that they're demonstrating that I hold. So it inspires me. That's why, because they're living it, and it helps me follow through on what my convictions are, my feelings are. I get strength from their example.
I think they work straight from heart, and I see on...
That's what. So because they do that, that inspires you to do the same yourself. Okay. Here's just a play on words. You walk, talks, Your talk talks, but your walk talks louder than your talk talks. Just play on words. What Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita on this point, chapter 3, whatever a great man performs, common men follow. So this is the why. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Okay, this is another interactive session. I'm putting you all to work. Here's the starting point. Think of a person, doesn't have to be a Hare Krishna person, but it certainly can be, who positively influenced your personal life, whoever, childhood teacher, historic hero, family member, any contact, etc. So positively influenced your personal life. What quality of theirs attracted you the most? You don't have to write it down because you can share it with others. How did that influence you the most? I don't know if that saying the most is the best way to put it. Discuss. Incidents where the role model identified above exemplified that quality. So I don't think I need to read it again. You can read it again. And we have some nice music to go along with your discussion activity. So when you're ready, find someone you can discuss with. Okay.
Very sweet. Yeah, sure.
Usually, I saw I see that from 10, and then we go down to 100 people. Still like that. It's part of the college, and then you go
When I was
after that 12.
some of the
You have to
exams,
take back that, and then you take notes. So during that time, I was studying
was
on
not
that,
spent
and
a few months.
uncle, my father's brother, because my father lives very close to the college there, so he used to stay there for a few years. So he was able to do exams of usually hardly people other their other kids sons or daughters to keep them in there. But at the time, so he was okay with staying with them and studying, going to college and couple of months, so providing whatever food and other stuff. So at the time he mentioned he not forced, but he mentioned how he could meditation help you, go really high. So that I still remember, because now I'm here, I think that thing really helped me. So he was really helping me, not only books, friends or whatever. During that period, it's like it's 3-4 years. So that really helped me to go really high. I did first masters and then masters, and then after that PhD. So this was all in India. So that, motivation for doing hard work, that really helped me. Because I didn't have enough money to afford a college. So he also helped me financially.
My mom is but then she comes out and teaches us.
Once they get major technical, then by themselves,
Stuff happened and had moved back now. And I said, not only because I'm leaving to be a life, to understand, yes, let us take it stop. But
One or two places.
this is the best opportunity she can have. Because it's a lot of different we can teach her, you know,
guiding students to the right path, that's not many people.
She was strict, but
Think about others.
Friends,
just touch up my you can come and learn. You can just become my child.
That's part of the family, yeah.
Yes, who is so has to come on. And then there's the ceiling. But it's still, it's never like some
I see listen to your example. I should develop that quality more in myself.
last time I had a smart class, but it's a like easy to form and not on the circle home. But then what for us?
So he's rooted on something otherwise it cannot for example like
I would just adore the way she teaches. She would make everything. She would just draw it like that.
Yeah.
Within minutes, like she would explain what order which is I remember on this facial activity branches. It's so amazing the way she And no matter how much they go to Abhilasha and anyone is same, lot of enthusiasm. Yeah. With Abhilasha, you're teaching Jesus.
One more minute.
Some family problems or something in the beginning. And that's in our souls is to see some qualities are there that like how much something that we do
Okay. Acharya. We know the definition. Someone, Acharya is one who leads or teaches by example. Of course, Bhagavad Gita is education. It's Krishna's instructing, and anyone instructing best, that they not, as we already said, they not just say something, but they carry that quality. And so when they say that something, it has a significant impact, even if they don't say the something, they teach just by their example. And another nice question is, how does it work? How does a teacher exemplify spiritual life? Because that's like, what's spiritual life anyways? And how does a teacher exemplify spiritual life? There's principles. And guess what? They have a lot of similarity with the earlier Gita Values. They exemplify equal vision, or seeing spirit in all living entities. We discussed this. There's differentiation of different coverings, and one relates to the individual appropriately according to their covering, but at the same time within there's spiritual entity, a living entity, spark of life, part of Krishna within. And therefore some respect goes to that living entity simply by that principle. So this is responding to the question, how does a person who's an acharya demonstrate their teaching by example? So this equal vision principle. Another is simple living, high thinking. Simple living, high thinking. How does simple living, high thinking connect with an acharya? Well, because things that are outside, while respecting their needs and others' needs, it's not the ultimate purpose of their life. And therefore, keeping things simple, it's a mode of goodness principle, but keeping things simple to give more freedom for higher thinking or spiritual thinking. That's just a characteristic of an acharya. There's exceptions. Nice exception is Pundarik Vidyanidhi. But you know the story of Pundarik Vidyanidhi? No. One of Lord Chaitanya's associates was named Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Pundarik Vidyanidhi was a brahmana. He eventually became the spiritual master of Gadadhar Pandit. Gadadhar Pandit in our Panchatattva, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivas. That's the 5 Panchatattva. So Gadadhar, in the Panchatattva, his spiritual master was Pundarik Vidyanidhi. And Pundarik Vidyanidhi moved to Navadvip after Mahaprabhu took his birth, because he knew, because he was a very, very advanced person. However, he liked to conceal his spiritual stature by hiding behind a show of being an extravagant person. But someone that was from the same place that he came from was Mukunda, class friend of Nimai Pandit and Gadadhar Pandit. And so Mukunda knew that as a young man, from very, very early age, Gadadhar Pandit was very renounced, the simple living, high thinking type. Very simple, very renounced, and very spiritually elevated at the same time. So Mukunda said, I want to introduce you to somebody. I think you're going to really like him. So just trusting that his friend, his class friend, Mukunda, he went. And when he went to see Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he looked like a mega sense gratifier. Lying on a soft, resting on a soft couch with white pillows and drinks on the table and perfumed, fragrances in the air and on his body. And Gadadhar's thinking, why did he bring me here? This fellow looks like exactly the opposite of what I am interested in. Knowing that Gadadhar was thinking like that, Mukunda, who was very expert at singing, started singing a verse from the Bhagavatam. And just hearing the verse from the Bhagavatam, Pundarik Vidyanidhi became absorbed in the message of that verse from the Bhagavatam, and he lost it. He went into a state of ecstasy. He fell off his nice seat, knocked over the table with the drinks on it, and was rolling on the ground. And Gadadhar's looking at him like, what happened? And Mukunda understood, so he kept singing and kept singing. Very sweetly. His voice was spectacular. But it was stimulating the ecstatic love of Pundarik Vidyanidhi, who was hiding behind being a man of extravagance. But that wasn't his nature. And so Gadadhar hadn't said anything, he just felt something. They felt really guilty now. Why was I thinking these bad things about this person? So when the whole scene quieted down, he expressed to Pundarik Vidyanidhi, I thought of you this way. In my mind I was criticizing you, and I had no idea. So I'd like to seek your forgiveness, and I can understand your very elevated personality. When the time comes, please give me diksha, give me mantra diksha. So Pundarik Vidyanidhi agreed, and on an auspicious time, Gadadhar Pandit of our Panchatattva became the diksha disciple of Pundarik Vidyanidhi. There's more to that story, but it's just an example of there's exceptions, but the exception was only apparent because he wasn't living extravagantly because he was a sense gratifier. He was appearing to be one who was not worthy of anyone's appreciation because he looked like a sense gratifier. But he was just concealing his spiritual quality. That's an exception. Ordinarily, it's an example of an acharya that he lives very simply. And their consciousness is very elevated. A nice example of this, there's storytelling time. This is Magari the Hunter story. On the left is Angira Muni, and in the middle, of course, is Narada Muni, and then there's the hunter. So the narration of this story that we hear from the scriptures is Narada was traveling one time in a forest, and he happened to see many animals that had arrows in their bodies, half killed, and they were crying out in pain because they were half killed. They weren't completely killed. So he was curious, why is this? And as he got closer, he saw the hunter. And the hunter looked like a wild man with his bow and arrow, and he was ready to shoot some other animals. And suddenly Narada Muni burst into the clearing, and the animals ran away. And the hunter, on the one hand, became angry. You've scared away all the animals I was about to shoot arrows at. But he also had enough decency that he recognized Narada as a saintly person. So he kind of controlled his anger. And who are you, and what are you doing here? And do you know what you just did? You just chased all the animals away. And Narada said, I'll be glad to answer your questions, but first, can I make a request of you? Very sweet voice. And the man said, well, sure. What would you like? I have so many different animal skins. I have a bear skin, a deer skin, and a raccoon skin. And how many skins do you want? He said, no, thank you. The one request I have is that you don't half kill the animals, you kill them completely. So why? Because the animals have to suffer. He said, well, I never heard that before. I've learned to half kill because my father, that's what I learned from my father. And I derive pleasure seeing the animal flapping, calling out, and I enjoy it. But it didn't occur to me that they're suffering. He said, yes, not only they're suffering, but you'll also have to suffer like they're suffering. So please don't, you have your occupation, you're maintaining your wife and your family, you kill them completely. I said, wow. For what about all the animals that I've half killed for so many years? What should I do? You're a great saint. I can understand. I don't know your name yet, but you're obviously a great saint. What should I do? He said, you need some maintenance, but I'll take care of maintaining you. So my request is you break your bow. Man looked at his bow and looked at Narada and looked at his bow and looked at Narada. He broke his bow. He said, very well. Now I will maintain you. You see over there, there's that nice cottage. You can stay there by the side of the cottage. You have a tulsi plant, and together with your wife, you can chant the holy names of the Lord, worship tulsi, and I'll see that your maintenance is taken care of. So off he went, and sure enough, because the hunter had become now a Vaishnav, the people in the village that lived not far from that forested area wanted to come and see, because he was known to be a bad person. Now he's a Vaishnav. So when they came, they brought some attar and some this and that and the other thing, and so he had more than what he required. Sometime later, Narada came back to pay a visit to Magari. And when he came, as the painting shows, he's with Angira Muni. And at a distance, Magari saw Narada coming from his cottage. So he started running, but as he was running, he stopped because he saw some ants on the path. So he took his upper garment and started sweeping the ants to the side. And Angira said, look at this. This man, you told me his livelihood before was half killing animals. Now he doesn't want to harm an ant. What happened? He became purified. So, as an example of simple living, as a result of high thinking or higher consciousness, one goes well with the other. And the opposite of simple living or extravagant living doesn't lend itself well to high thinking. So it's a phrase that Prabhupada used often. Simple living, high thinking. The Acharya exemplifies the 9 processes, or one of the 9 processes of devotional service. There they are. Where do we begin? Shravanam Kirtanam is at the bottom. It's Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadev Goswami. Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. What's the Vishnu Smaranam example? Huh? Prahlad Maharaj at the top. Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, that's Lakshmi. Bandhanam, that's Akrura, down at the lower right hand corner. Archanam, that's Prithu Maharaj. Dasyam, Hanuman. Sakyam, that's Arjuna on the left. And Atmanivedana, Bali Maharaj. So there's the 9 processes of bhakti, and they exemplify those 9 processes of bhakti. A third principle, the question that this is responding to is, what are the characteristics? How do you identify one who is an acharya? They exemplify, this is something to do with the ahimsa point, they serve others to awaken their spiritual nature. Remember the discussion? Violence and nonviolence. Nonviolence is normally taken to mean you don't hurt people, don't cause them pain. Real nonviolence is you awaken their spiritual life, because if they go through their life without spiritual life, they're suffering. The real happiness, the real identity is lost to them. So real nonviolence is awakening their spiritual understanding. And dedicating oneself to that, that's an example of an acharya, as Prabhupada did. And exemplifying that it's not just notional, but it's very practical. Wherever we may go, it's practical. Whoever we may be, whatever the position that we're in, for our psychophysical nature or culture or nationality or gender or IQ or something, doesn't matter. One can exemplify spiritual life in practical demonstration ways. That's the acharya. The photograph is Prabhupada at Tompkins Square Park, sitting in the midst of not very refined people. But because of his spiritual position, being respectful for the most part, and listening to his words and becoming benefited, because that's what he was there for. On the topic of acharya, a very natural question arises. How are we supposed to do that? Because we're not very elevated. We're far from being perfect beings, so how can we be examples? Well, like Magari, or there's many, many, many other examples within the Vedic texts, that persons that weren't elevated or became very distracted or very far from acharya-like behavior, but by good association, their lives changed. Several examples. Dhruva, Kshatriya, spirited, insulted by his stepmother, total anger, total revenge, vengeful, but it was all gone by association of devotees and his living the way that he lived for some period of time, and he became freed from that lower quality. There are many nice examples. Here's another nice example, is King Chitraketu. You know the story of King Chitraketu? Bhagavatam. The day will come that you'll read Bhagavatam and you'll remember all these nice examples. King Chitraketu was a very qualified person in many, 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 many ways, and it lists his qualifications as a good person, good king. However, there was one feature in his character that was just overwhelming him. And that was he wanted a son, because it's the duty of a king to have a successor son. And he had no son. So he married many, many, many wives. He married more wives than Krishna did. And there was no son. So he was in great distress. So that just fast forward, it's a detailed description. But one sage, Angira, came to visit the palace. This because the king was very qualified. He received him very nicely and sat at his feet. And Angira said, "You serve me very nicely, but you look unhappy. What's wrong? Is your kingdom not going nicely this way, that way, the other way? It looks like everything is fine." And my kingdom is fine, but my mind isn't. And my mind is not fine because I don't have a son. And so he pleaded with him, "Please, you're a sage, do something so that I can have a son." And Angira understood, this man too attached. I can't just preach to him because he's too attached. So he made an arrangement that if it's a fruit, that if his wife could eat this fruit, then she would bear a son. But the son would be both a source of great joy and a source of great distress. And King Chitraketu was thinking, well, better a son that's a little disobedient than no son at all. So he went ahead. And sure enough, his wife became pregnant. And that was really nice, because the king became absorbed in his first wife and the pregnancy and his desires fulfilled. But all the other co-wives and queens, they were being neglected. And some of those co-wives, not just being neglected, they became, let's get rid of this child, because he's taking the attention of the king away. So they poisoned the child when he was born. And King Chitraketu saw his dead child lying in the crib. Started crying and crying and crying, and his wife was crying and crying. And the wives, the queens that had poisoned him, they acted surprised. Lo and behold, there's Narada Muni coming at the right time. Before it was Angira Muni. So now they both have the discussion with King Chitraketu, and they preach to King Chitraketu about transcendence. King Chitraketu is amazed at hearing their words. He asks them to explain it again. So as he gets it, Narada volunteers, "If you'd like, I can bring your son back to life." So he calls out to the boy and asks the boy, look at your father. See how miserable he is because you left? Please come back and satisfy him. So the baby sits up in his crib and has a conversation with Narada Muni about, transcendental knowledge. Who's my father? How many lifetimes I've had, and how many fathers I've had, and who can say who my real father is? I can say who my real father is. I was just with him, the Supreme Father. That's my real father, and I'd like to be with him. With your permission, I'd like to return. And he laid back down. Chitraketu was shocked. His wife was shocked. Everybody was shocked. And having that experience, the attachment phase was over, and King Chitraketu left the palace, became a devotee, became a meditator devotee, and several other things happened. He became a great personality. But overcoming his lamentation by this association of Angira and Narada, his lower quality, attachment quality, became freed. He became freed from it. So there's so many examples. Here's another one. Ajamila, 6th Canto Bhagavatam. Ajamila? No. Ajamila was a young Brahmin boy. As he grew up, he was trained very carefully. He became qualified. As a young Brahmin boy, he became married. At his father's request, he was going into the forest every day to gather ingredients for the yajna, fire and this and that, firewood, and this and that and the other thing needed for the yajna. And one day, he saw what you see in the painting. He saw a prostitute and a Sudra going at it. And he became attracted. He had never seen anything like that before, because he had grown up as a young Brahmin boy. And he couldn't get his mind off the lady. And so he eventually started visiting the lady and started cohabiting with the lady and invited the lady to come and stay in his house with him. But he's got a wife, and his wife left him, and he lived with the prostitute. There's a long description. But he eventually gave up that attachment when the time of death came and the Yamadutas came to take him away for all of his sinful activities. And seeing the Yamadutas, he screamed. He screamed the name of his eldest son, who he had named Narayana. So he was calling his son. But the son's name was Narayana, and so it's an indirect or abhas form of chanting, and calling very intently the name of Narayan. The representatives of Lord Vishnu came and stopped the Yamadutas, leave him alone. And they had a big discussion about who's to be punished and who's not to be punished, what is dharma and what is adharma, and how to transcend adharma. And Jamila was rescued because he called the name Narayan, just by coincidence. So these are examples, these three, and there's many other examples in scriptures, of persons who have moved from a base quality. This is the question was, when we're not so advanced, how can we apply the principle of acharya? Take good association. And whatever disqualification may be there, take good association, acharya-like association, and become acharya-like through their association. That means striving to follow, that's what we want to do, that's what the starting point of our discussion, following persons who set a good example. And when you strive to follow persons who set a good example, you become like them. You become acharya-like. That's one of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Sangha means association. And kama means desire. So one develops kama or desire according to the association you keep. Sangat sanjayate kama. So hear regularly and from qualified persons and try to follow them. There's a big difference between imitating and following. We don't imitate, but follow as we're inspired to follow. So here's some concluding points. An acharya inspires integrity. Teaching by example is the essence of education. So integrity is where, same as we've been saying, you have a value and you live by it. And that's the behavior. You have a value and the behaviors match your values. And your words match your character or your how you live your life. They match up. And the second point is teaching, or the acharya principle, teaching by example. Not just by your words, but by your example. Words are fine, and your example is better than fine. It's more compelling. There's this saying, what? Actions speak louder than words. So someone may not speak a lot, but if their behavior, if their character is consistent, and their behavior is consistent with their character, then that's good association. It's a good way to teach others by example. Leading by example is the essence of governance. Prabhupada often spoke a lot about good government, or the opposite, bad government. And good government is, of course, good government is a person that's trained and qualified, but they've been trained by someone who's an acharya, so they become acharya-like, so they lead by example. That's good governance. Exemplifying one's principles is the basis of dignity, respect, and trust. So these are all high-sounding words, but it's true. So this is one of the values, the acharya principle. Bhagavad Gita wants to help us become acharya-like. And one who becomes acharya-like, there's dignity in self-dignity and dignity in your interactions with others in the world. You respect others and it garners respect. And it nurtures trust in such a person. So let's go to Bhagavad Gita and how Arjuna is modeling the acharya principle. He's teaching by example. He teaches how to inquire, how to hear after inquiring, how to be open-hearted, because he had a different idea. Sometimes when you have a different idea, you don't hear so well. But he was submissive to Krishna, open-hearted, and his inquiry was, what's my duty? And once Krishna reoriented his sense of what duty is, he was ready to go, because he just wants to do what his duty is. And there's challenges in life, circumstances, circumstances are never stagnant, they're always shifting, adjusting. stick around a while. It's always like that. Inevitable death. Just today I got notifications of devotee disciples. Just today, so they're elderly. It wasn't a big surprise, but they left their body. And their family and friends are grieving that loss. It's natural. But how to face it when it comes? How to move from false ego to the real self. So Arjuna is modeling these. He's Acharya-like, although he's not, we don't think of him so much as an Acharya. He's Acharya-like because he's a good student. He's a good friend. He's a good listener. He's a good follower. Okay, we're going to end with an application exercise. Here's just a very simple story. It's going to be a little video. This is a lady and her daughter, and she's trying to teach her daughter. Very simple story. And the end of the story is a happy ending. The daughter becomes a well-educated, bright, young person, but her background is quite ordinary. So here we go. I hope it works. Well, it's not working. There we go.
ฉันไม่ได้เรียนหนังสือไม่รู้ว่าต้องพูดต้องสอนแบบไหนฉันรู้แค่ว่าต้องทำให้ดูให้เขาเห็นเป็นตัวอย่าง
เป็นไงล่ะอร่อยกว่าไอติมอีกใช่ไหมจ้าแม่น่าทำขายนะแม่เนาะไอติมสับปะรดนะคะไอติมสับปะรดนะคะไอติมสับปะรดนะคะไอติมสับปะรดนะคะแม่ทำไมไม่มีใครซื้อเลยอ่ะงั้นลองไปดูที่ตลาดว่าเขาขายกันยังไงอีกไหมจ๊ะกล่องละ5 ต่อกล่อง10จ้า
ปิ้งจอมครับปิ้งอร่อยครับปิ้งจอมครับจ้า
ที่กล่องละ5นะคะ3 กล่อง10จ้า
พอเห็นเขาได้สังเกตได้ลองทำเองวันนี้ฉันสบายใจแล้วที่เห็นเขาทำได้แบบนี้และมั่นใจว่าวันข้างหน้าถ้าไม่มีฉันเขาจะยืนได้ด้วยตัวเขาเอง
อัชราภูลสวัสดิ์ได้รับทุนจากโครงการสารรักจนจบปริญญาตรีปี 2556 แรงบันดาลใจจากครอบครัวสร้างการเรียนรู้ที่ไม่รู้จบสารรักจาก AIS
It's a simple story, but it's nice. So it fits in with, it doesn't have to be, the Acharya-like person doesn't have to be a great person, but they can learn and develop and grow. So that's us, in spiritual life also. Here's some concluding remarks. Any value or a quality, because this is Gita Values, or quality of Acharya-like, it remains forever if we learn it from the deepest place of our hearts. And the message here is the values, to make it go more deeply, helps by having a heart that's pure, the openness of heart, by mantra meditation, and gradual, ever so gradual, spiritual awakening. Certainly that's how Srila Prabhupada wanted the Hare Krishna movement to unfold, recognizing the audience that he had to work with. Now, the audience that he had to work with was young Western people. It's, look around at our temples, and it's not young Western people so much. It's the non-resident Indian people. But the mission that Prabhupada was given by his spiritual master specifically was the English-speaking parts of the world. So now people, non-resident Indians, come here and become interested in Krishna consciousness, and that's very nice. It's not like we'll be losing the Samadarshana principle if we said otherwise. However, part of the non-resident Indians living in America mission is to help reach the hearts and the minds of all English-speaking people. Anyway, that's one of my favorite little soapboxes to get up, and we should be conscious of that mission and try to do what we can to help facilitate that mission. It's nice building the new temple, and many more people. I was just noticing last night, as cold as it was, the parking lot was almost filled. Yeah? I mean, there were some empty spaces, but not many. So it's popular. When the building is up, it's going to be more people. I don't know where we're going to put all the cars. Need a deck or something. But it shouldn't just be the non-resident Indian people. There should be the mission is everyone. Anyway, just taking what's on this slide here. It's a value, the Samadarshana value, and the mission that was given by our founder Acharya, to our founder Acharya, and then we can say passed on to us. It's a value. We need intelligence. We need, some conviction to go forward with all of that. Okay, so that's the Gita value number 4 in summary. The Gita value of teaching by example. Short class. Any discussion? Any topics you'd like to hear something further about, or comments? Yes.
So this has been lingering in my mind from the first session. So being exemplary in character and speech. I was also thinking that there will be gray areas for people.
Yes. Yes.
And especially this is a process of purification.
Yes.
So um, um, uh, uh, that is where like I'm trying to understand like what does it mean like being acharya or having a character and speech, like how one goes about those gray areas, like so.
How one goes about it. Maybe if you ask the question a little bit differently, you might get a different answer. Knowing that I'm not acharya like, how do I get more acharya like? That's the question. Well, let's go back to humility and acknowledge this is where I am. And as one becomes clearer of what the goal is, I mean, there's lots of things that aren't the goal that we think are the goal, and we hear what the goal is or what the value. Just like the discussion about nonviolence, there was some discussion with some persons, like kind of offline, because they didn't want to say it during the class. But they struggle when they think about what Arjuna had to do. It's not just like Krishna wanted it, but specifically, these are his cousins. And one of them was their grandfather, who raised them in the absence of their father. So they naturally have affection for grandfather Bhishma, like their father. And their teacher that taught them everything. And they got, you have to have, and fighting means till the finish, not just like do some arm wrestling. It's finish. So, and then the reasons that Arjuna gives, from the heart level and the dharmic, so that someone was sharing, I struggle with this. Nice devotee, but it's not surprising. So how do you be acharya like? It's like asking Sri Harsha, how do you have violence and do you have non-violence? How do they go together? So it's not. How do you understand what being acharya like is, and how do you get there? So it takes some refinement. It takes some refinement by not exactly hitting the delete button from everything that I thought, but being willing at least hit the pause button, and being willing to consider maybe I don't have the right understanding of what anacharya is, or what it means to just live according to what Krishna wants, and that's best. So so how do you get to where you want to go from where you are? It's humility, having an acharya to follow, an ideal example to follow. This goes back to what our questions were, like how does it really work? What is it about an acharya? Some persons that were inspirational in your life. What was it about that person that helped you? And then what to speak of just helped you because they were a good teacher. I can, thinking of some really good teachers I had, they really helped shape me in my, my life and my academic interests and so forth and so on. But acharya in the Bhagavad Gita sense of the spiritual acharya is just being a good follower. So it's humility, recognizing what quality really is, confirmed by scripture, but seeing it exhibited, and then modeling it, because it doesn't necessarily going to match what my idea of, like this thing of Arjuna having to kill. It's like, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Not only kill, but his cousins. And Prabhupada would often say his brothers, because in Vedic culture, a cousin is like a brother. A brother's like a cousin is like a brother. So he would say, without just saying cousins, because they're all part of the, you start getting into it, this is a detail, but they're all related. They're from the Vrishni dynasty. So it says Kuru, but they're all Kauravas. The Pandavas are also Kauravas. They're in that line. And they're, fighting against their dynasty members. And their teacher and their grandfather, who took care of them when they had no father. Like, wow. That's heavy. Krishna wanted it. So just do it, because Krishna wants it. So it takes a lot. That it takes a lot. So that a fundamental to go forward is the identity is not the covering. The identity is the soul within. Then you just keep moving. Nonviolence, humility. The acharya, become an acharya. So you go through those steps. And it's easy to get distracted. It's say the opposite. It takes some strength to stay the course. To become actual acharya like and not just not become complacent. When the discomforts of life subside, now I can become complacent. I can relax a little bit. It's, something happens when you relax a little bit. Maya comes back in real fast. I vividly remember one morning class in Brooklyn. Prabhupada was saying, it's not that when you slacken in Krishna consciousness, that you then, it's okay, you can tell Maya, you can come, a little bit of Maya is okay now. Please come. As soon as they're slackening in Krishna consciousness, immediately Maya is there, giving us something to do. The illusory something to do. Immediately. No delay. The example, you turn away from the sun, what do you see? Shadow. Immediately. There's no invitation. Mr. Shadow, please come. Immediately it's there. So similarly, that was his point, slackening in Krishna consciousness means immediately Maya is there to give us like what our life was like before, and that's the entry point, and then it just gets, more, the changing shape of Maya keeps going. But commonly when persons slacken, they go back to what they were before. That's the first dropping point. The distractions, the activities, the behaviors, the speech, the norms of their life, and then it gets darker. Quickly. Commonly. So acharya-like means there has to be some sustained effort to keep going, keep going, keep going. Then comes the same question. I don't have that qualification. Acharya is way up there and I'm way down here. How am I going to be an acharya? Or even acharya-like? So it's the same sequence, and just stay with it. The potency is there in Bhagavad Gita and the chanting of the holy name, the purification method and the teachings to guide us to get there. Sincerity is required, careful following of standard activities and guiding principles, these values. Be in contact with a good teacher, you can become a good teacher. And then what does staying in contact with a good teacher mean, and who's a good teacher? So those are important questions. Staying in contact with it means serving and hearing and then applying and not getting complacent, but continuing doing that. And then there's different motives. We had this whole seminar with the Chinese devotees about the purpose and the motivation to stay with that purpose. So all of that is required to become acharya-like. And it works. It's meant to actually bring about that transformation, and it works. Gradual, but it works. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I was trying to understand more of simple living and high thinking that we spoke on while giving the example of the hunter becoming a Brahmana or Vaishnava later. So I was thinking all these days, I'm thinking about leaning towards more on the high thinking part without doing the first part, which is simple living, or maybe not giving as much importance as trying to cultivate high thinking than the simple living. But that you mentioned in this lecture that simple living will automatically bring up high thinking in a person.
Well, I didn't exactly say that. I said it the other way around. The other way around is, as soon as there's over-involvement in stuff, in the objects of the senses, the determination and the focus for higher thinking is diffused. But it's not, it's because some people are very austere, they're not high thinking. No, it's not that simple living automatically brings high thinking. It's the tendency for a spiritually elevated person, in whatever the background, discipline, ism, practice, is vairagya, jnana vairagya. They go together. Knowledge, jnana, detachment. And a person that has knowledge exhibits this quality of detachment or simple living. Necessities, but keep it simple. Did that address your question?
Yes, that answered my question. Thank you.
Yes.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. My question is about the humility part, yesterday's class. The three levels of responding to somebody's appreciating us, saying that I did not. I mean, no, I'm not even accepting it, or externally at least.
Yeah, denial.
Yeah, denial. When I get some appreciation, I know that the service that I have done is not because of my own thing. It is given to me, that because of that, because it was it was given that empowerment, or whatever we can say. I mean, I was able to do because of that, not because of my own quality. I was able to do that service. I know that it is clear to me. But when that appreciation comes, how do I respond externally? Because when sometimes I feel it's like more than what I can accept it, or what I can take it, how do I respond to that individual or person?
Well, the third option has the key, and just redirect. The example that was given is very simple. The fact is, I'm not qualified. But an unqualified person being given some opportunity to serve, and along with the opportunity to serve, somehow some ability to do some service, that's just mercy upon an unqualified person. So if you want to give some appreciation, go to the one that gave the opportunity for the service and the ability to do the service. So I'll take credit for saying yes. And then the real credit goes to the one that gave the service and gave whatever it is the ability to do that service.
Sometimes that may look like, I'm that such a great personality that I got this. I mean, the other person might take it if I say that way. So I was just, kind of some confusion sometimes.
Okay, well, you shouldn't speak words that you don't feel or don't have conviction in. So there are other ways you could respond than to that one that was shown on the screen. Point to somebody that really can do the service, fantastic. There's a person that's really qualified. That's what happens in Brihat Bhagavatamrita. You familiar with this? Narada's searching for who's the greatest recipient, and he goes to somebody because he's referred to somebody. They say, no. The one that's really here's my disqualification. The one that's really fortunate is so-and-so. There's a really fortunate person. They're the recipient of mercy. So it's defer and deflect. So you try to get yourself out of the center. I mean, it works just to keep it simple and say, you're very kind. I really don't have any qualification, but you're very kind. Thank you. Or, any one of us has brought any one of us to do anything that we're doing. It's just we're objects of mercy from the merciful. Where would we be without the merciful? So it depends what you feel, and you say what you feel. But from the position of humility, and then we went through what does humility mean. It doesn't mean low self-esteem. With the spiritual conception of self, you look to those that are decorating the self, and the person's far more qualified than me. So, you have something? No, just scratching. Okay. Yes.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, I want to comment that the series that you're doing, this Gita Values series, I'm finding it very helpful and very practical to be applied.
It's a little challenging too.
It is actually challenging and also very contemplative
Yes.
to see where I'm at. This point about humility that Lakshmikanta Prabhu mentioned, I'm also contemplating since yesterday that exercise that you had us do. My son, he made a comment yesterday when we were driving back from the temple. He said that I don't want to receive a lot of praise for my mridanga playing because I want to stay humble. When people praise me, I see this pride creeping up.
It's similar.
Yeah, very similar. So then I started contemplating more about myself. And I realized that, those three options that were given. So verbally, we say, yes, it's, somehow by Guru and Krishna's mercy, I was able to do this service. But in the heart, I'm finding that it's the second option. There is, some that contamination or pride that I was able to do this with some of my ability. So there is, the intention is that I want to be humble, what my son mentioned, but there is a gap with what I'm speaking and what's in my heart.
Welcome to the club. That's just liminal space thing. Just say, take what you're saying and go further with it. As you become a little more spiritually qualified tomorrow than you are today, you'll see even more how that tendency is very strong. So as you're seeing today, more than you saw yesterday, that tendency is there. It's not just because your son, it's from the overall purification. And your son's remark just triggers the acknowledgement. Yeah, that's me. I'm not thinking like my son is thinking. I'm thinking like, I'm waiting. So refinement is part of refinement. Refinement is the further one becomes spiritually advanced, the more one becomes factually and abjectly humble. Which sounds kind of like, wait a minute. I don't know if I want that. I don't know, abjectly humble. But it's transcendental humble. It's not the low self-esteem humble. So that takes refinement to a spiritual conception of what humility is. And when one becomes spiritually humble, then any amount of weight can be placed on that humility. One doesn't get crushed by the weight. Because that means there's one thing. And the one thing is Krishna is to be pleased. And if this isn't pleasing, then it's, it just drops off because, so purity is there's a price to pay for it. That means letting go of some things and accepting that which is pleasing to Krishna. So it's gradual. That's the liminal space. We're far, very far, very far from the goal. Keep going. Don't get discouraged. Just so the process is working because now you're able to recognize stuff within that you weren't able to recognize before, and then overcome it. but I can't overcome it on my own. But let me strive to overcome it, then you become more dependent upon Krishna's mercy. And as you get filled with Krishna's mercy, there's no room for pride. That's spiritual life. That's what we're doing. We're doing spiritual life. So that some stuff goes and some other stuff grows. Stay with it. Back to his question. Become acharya like, so that you how do you get there when you're like me? Keep good examples. Know what good examples are. Look up to them. We're going to be doing the same thing, by the way, during the Christmas weekend or the winter retreat weekend. It's Lord Chaitanya's and associates. So that part of the discussion, you can be prepared. Prepare yourself as you're hearing. There's going to be questions like, what is there about these associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that really inspire me? And what are some practical things I can do with that inspiration to become more like them? Which means, less like I presently am. And then they're devoted, and their qualification is Lord Chaitanya. And what are the features about Lord Chaitanya that make me want to be his? And deepen my relationship with Lord Chaitanya. So it's it's just another way of saying the same thing, but in this case, these are perfected souls, and we're far from it. But by hearing about them, purification comes, cleansing comes, inspiration comes, energy in that direction comes, feeling shelter in those wonderful personalities. It's the Acharya principle magnified. And we just keep moving, although we're far from the goal. That's our life. Just chant Hare Krishna and go back to Godhead. Become pure devotee, go back to Godhead, chant Hare Krishna. Now, it's true, that it takes offenseless chanting, to get to this stage of offenseless chanting takes some purification, but it's true. Everything is there. And one who has faith chants in a faithful way, and they serve in a faith, it just keeps growing. We have a long way to go. That's okay. The effort that we're making is well worth it because it's taking us to the right place. However long it takes. That's how long it takes. Something else? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki